right, back of the pack, Ultra Guy here. A little house cleaning. We're actually moving, so this is a fake background, as you can tell. My cool background that I had is all taken down because we're moving. So, but same podcast, obviously. But I do want to introduce you to somebody today who I met last weekend. Ashley. Ashley, please help me pronounce your last name so I don't mess it up.
Yeah, Ashley Nordell.
Nordell. Leave it up to me, I would have butchered it. But Ashley Nordell, I met her at Spike Camp, and we'll hear more about it, but I have to tell you, I was just so impressed. I'll let the cat out of the bag a little bit. She won first female, so very impressive effort. But I just had the feeling that she'd be a great guest, and I started to, look her up, and I was just so amazed. We had a team dinner. The Death March team had a dinner after it, and she was there, and she was telling me some stories about these races she's doing all over the country. Arkansas was one we discussed, and then some FKTs. And I just thought, holy cow, I want to hear this lady's story. So she's so kind. But Ashley, if you wouldn't mind, just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you started running, and let's hear more about your story.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Christian. So I come from a family of runners. So I actually was probably the resistant runner of the family. Both my parents run. Both my parents have done ultras. My dad still does ultras. He was at Spike Camp. We'll get into that.
Yes.
My younger sister was a very good runner, started competing at an early age. So I think if I was being honest, I probably didn't like being the slower sister and just the whole family, like we'd go on vacation and everyone would go running. And I was a runner by the nature of a family of runners, but I played all the other sports. Like soccer was my big sport. I played basketball. I did track, but kind of unwillingly, I would put in the amount of effort needed to do it, but it wasn't really my thing at first. My sister's coach used to try to get me to do these cross country races, I think to like complete a team, and I would do them, and I was probably a good runner for a non-runner, but then you're going against races of people who are actually training, and so anyway, it just was. I was very anti-running, to put it mildly. And then, but I was always an athlete. And so when I was going to college, I was originally going to go and try to play soccer at the small D3 school. And I kind of wimped out the summer before because I just got nervous about going to a new state, like the whole transition to college. And I think I just got a little bit overwhelmed. So I figured I'll just go and just try college out and not do a sport. And then it's a small school, and I got there and kind of everyone does play sports, and sports was kind of always my identity. And so suddenly I'm a non-athlete at a school when all I knew was kind of being an athlete. And so I kind of missed the window on soccer, and I was just kind of out running. And the track coach saw me running one day and convinced me to try track. And so I did it, and I loved it. I think I loved the idea of it being on a team and having teammates and kind of that immediate friendship group. And so they convinced me to try cross country, which I'd never done before because it was always during soccer season where I grew up. So I did cross country, and that kind of, I think because now running was maybe a little bit more my choice. And it's not that my parents they never pushed me into running, but there was always sort of this like expectation from the universe that I would be a runner since everyone else in my family ran. I kind of got into it, and then some college roommates decided we should run a marathon on like no training at all. So, I think the long run I had done was my dad and I ran the old Kent Bank 25K in Michigan. I don't even know like the timetable of when that was and when I did my marathon, but the marathon kind of made me realize like the longer distance, maybe the better for me. And so, after college, I was back in my hometown of Corvallis, Oregon for a year before going to grad school. And they have a 50K out there called the McDonald Forest 50K. And my dad was running it that year. And so I decided to train for that 50K. And I didn't carry water. I think I carried a few gels in my sports bra and they fell out. And I went out too fast and it was miserable. My dad passed me somewhere out there. He still likes to talk about how he beat me in that 50K. But it kind of it kind of, how everyone says, like, then they're hooked. Apparently, like, even with all the suffering, I was sort of hooked on this new sport. And so within that, that was like a May of 2020 or 2003, sorry, like way, way long ago. I ran a 50 miler, which then qualified me to put my name in the lottery for Western States. And it was back when you had about 50-50 odds of getting into Western States. It cost $150 to run it. I got in. And so suddenly within a year of running ultras, I'm running Western States. And
Oh my gosh, that's
yeah,
so
yeah,
awesome.
it was not, I mean, it was not anything I would prescribe, but I was 23 years old and had no real, no guidance. Like there was not, nowadays I feel like 23 is not even that young. Like you see a lot of young people in the ultra world, but back then there really wasn't. And so there was a lot of like, you're too young to do it. Or if I was running with someone, it would either be like my dad's friends or I went to grad school back down where I went to college in Southern California. And I met this running group like online up in the high desert. And so I would drive like an hour out to the desert and run with this group. And I was 23 and I think, they were 40 to 70-year-old mostly men, and they were amazing. They were my mentors. Like they, would take me out on these trails. They would, down the road, I ended up running Angeles Crest 100 because that sort of was our local 100. And they would take me out on those trails and have me like run in front so I knew where to go and just really mentored me into the ultra running space. People you would never meet if it weren't for like this common thing of running, these crazy miles. And so yeah, so I kind of jumped 50K to 100. Western States was one of those. I'd been injured from February until about May, but because I was like 20 and didn't really think consequences, I thought I'll just start and see how far I can go. And then it turns out like one of the traits of being an ultra runner is being very stubborn. And so at some point it's like I've gone this far, now I'm going to finish. And the last 30 miles of Western States was my pacer, Sean Meisner, duct taping bags of ice to my knees because my IT bands both like went out. And every aid station, we would tear off the duct tape, put ice bags back on. And that was like my final 30 miles of Western States. And then I ended in the medical tent with an IV. And it was, that was my first 100. And again, you would think like that should be like, never again. This is a terrible idea. I couldn't bend my knees for like 3 weeks after.
Oh my gosh.
And then I was like hooked on that one and jumped in, to Angeles Crest. And my first 5 years or so, I would say I dealt with a lot of injuries because I just jumped all in. I didn't know anything about, there really wasn't even a conversation on how to train for these things. Like there was the only fuel available back then was hammer gel and goo. The only running shoes were Montrails. We all had those giant hand bottles that we'd run with, kind of the race ready shorts. So it was, nowadays I feel like there's a lot more. There's online training plans. There's people sharing information. Then it was not. It was still a very new sport. It was basically a sport of 50 to 60-year-old men who were no longer running faster marathons, so they decided to go longer. And then I feel like the sport kind of evolved from there. But yeah, I went from the resistant runner who used to tell my coach that 3,000 meters was way too far to race to choosing to do 100 milers. And so that's kind of like how I got started. I would say my parents were huge influences. My dad and I still run together, and he's going to do the McDonald Forest 50K again this year. And so I kind of had, I may not have had like the knowledge we have now, but I had my dad and his friends and my high desert, 67-year-old guys to help
Yeah.
guide me along the way. And it started something pretty cool.
Well, I'd love for you to, and offline obviously, but I'd love for you to point your dad out because there were a few guys. My dad was there too. He's 77, so I did notice a few guys in that age range,
Yeah.
and it is so cool to me when I see someone in that age range, male, female.
Hmm.
They are just amazing, and they have this constant pace, and it so impresses me anytime I see that.
Yeah, no, for
It's
sure. It
it's so
it's
cool.
amazing. Yeah, my
So
dad, he came out with just a buddy who They just hike together. But my dad, I think, might come next year and kind of do more his thing, do some more laps. But every time I saw him, he's talking to somebody because he knows everybody out there too. And I recognized actually out there at Spike Camp, several people from kind of the early years that I started doing ultras, like that generation, they were out at Spike Camp. So people I hadn't seen, in years I saw out there, which was very cool. So I saw a lot of familiar faces from back in my early days of doing it. And then, there were kids out there doing laps, which was amazing. I told my oldest daughter, I was like, next year, you come do some laps if you want. And I just think the atmosphere of Spike Camp is like it's exactly why I do ultras. Like it embodies a whole lot of characteristics of why we would people might say like, why would you go out and run up and down the same mountain for 12 hours? Like it sounds crazy to say it, but all 280 people or whatever the number was out there, like not one of them is out there questioning why they're doing it, and it was a very awesome event. And yeah, I think Taylor put together something pretty special with Spike Camp for sure.
I agree with you, Taylor, and the Recovery Strong team. They did so good at kind of capturing that old school ultra feel.
Totally. Yeah.
And packaging up it, I say modern, like a mountain's a mountain. It's not a modern mountain, but in a modern race, a modern event, no live streams, which don't get me wrong, live streams are cool, but there's just old school. You grab the duck at the top and you bring it to those old cues that, you've been doing it longer than I have, but when I started out, there was a lot of those old school type races, and that.
Yeah.
I can tell you, one of the things that attracted me was that older guard, the older ultra guard, because it was this edgy kind of weird sport, and you meet those guys and gals, and they still have it. It's that kind of edgy, weird, like outcast almost. I'm not saying they're outcast, but there's that, like you said, it was the guys and gals who weren't running fast marathons anymore, and we're like, yeah, let's go out.
We'll just quadruple the distance and make it cool.
My very first guest is actually a friend of mine, and he's got an old picture of him and his dad doing an ultra when he was 15, and he's about our age. And so that was just way, way back in the day when it was just still weird. Like, what are these people doing, And so I agree with you. I love that old guard. And Spike Camp Taylor and the guys did so good at really embodying that. And also the community and the that you felt, the unity there at Spike Camp. It was just really great. And so there's your free plug. Go to Spike Camp next year.
Camp. Well, awesome. It is. I think calling it sort of old school is exactly like those are the races I still gravitate to. I don't know if it's just because that's what was around when I started and fell in love with it. And so, I've done I'll do some of the newer ones that maybe, you've got the drones or the different kind of vibe, but the ones that I come back to, we talked together about, Arkansas and how I keep going back to those, but I just like the really grassroots, old school, like, I don't know, someone drawing a chalk line at the start and being like, all right, everyone, I guess we start now. Here's your starting line. And I love at Spike Camp, they take a Sharpie and they do your bib, every time you come down. There's no timing chip. Like you however you want to get off the mountain and get down to the start, like that's the route you can take. And I feel like that will probably be one of my favorite events, to my list now, just because of everything the atmosphere and everything that surrounds it.
I'm sold on it also. I unfortunately couldn't go the first year, but the second they opened it up for this year, I just was like, yep, let's go. And I texted my dad. I was like, hey, you got to do this. This will be fun. He's like, okay. And he signed right up, so definitely we're talking about going back. So it's good. Super exciting.
For sure.
To see what those Taylor and the Recovery Strong team have done out there. It's just very impressive. But one thing let's just pause real quick. How many times did you go up and down? I know I never asked you that night, but obviously you took
Um,
first place female. So how many
yeah.
times did you do it?
So it was 18,
Oh,
which is I think that's what I did last year, but I was telling someone like this year went smoother. Like I finished with time to spare and felt a little better. Like the first year, I had no idea. Like I didn't even know if people would be out 12 hours. Like I didn't bring poles. I didn't come prepared on year one. When people asked what I was doing, I was like, I don't know. I think I'm going to go up and maybe run 30 miles. Like who knows what it'll be like. And I didn't expect us all to be out there for 12 hours on year one. So this year I brought some poles and picked them up, the final 3 laps or so. And yeah, it's it's not, I mean, yeah, it's kind of I guess you could call it a race, but I don't even really approach it as a race. Like I usually in a race at some point out there, I'm like, oh, okay, I am not doing this ever again. And that happens like every time I run a 100 miler and I finish feeling, needing a little break before I hit the sign up again. But something about Spike Camp, I think, I mean, you can take it as competitively as you want. You can go in, you can have a list of goals of how many you'd like to do. But I think this one I just approach in like, let's go and have 12 hours on the mountain kind of fun day. And that seems to work. And it was fun. And there wasn't a timeout there. Like I didn't even put on headphones. Like I never 12 hours goes by really fast when you're going up and down and seeing people and having that kind of community support and like everyone just cheering, and it was awesome. And so yeah, I mean, I guess you could call it a race, but I like to think of it just as a really kind of cool event.
well, I agree with you that the unity of the community. It was great
Exactly.
out there.
Yeah.
It was really special. Um, I'll brag on you for a minute because I know you won't, but you did 18 and the first place man took 19. That is awesome. I think
Oh,
ultra
thanks.
is like the greatest equalizer in sport because you've got men beating women and just really, the age just kind of blends and it's just awesome.
Yeah,
So
I think
that's
the
amazing.
longer that you're out there, the more it kind of equalizes, the playing field a little bit, for sure. So
Yeah.
yeah,
You
no,
guys,
it was a good day.
so I'll brag on you for because I know
Thank you.
you won't. Definitely not your personality type, but yes, that is so awesome.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Just to put it in perspective for people listening and who didn't go or did go, I did 10, and I think a lot of the Death March, I talked to a few other people from Death March, and they were like, we're going to do 10 and chill. And I was like, I'm doing 10 and chill. I'm going to do that plan. Uh, the 18 is just amazing to me. That's so
Thank
awesome.
you.
So huge congratulations there. One thing that I did want to talk a little bit about is during the dinner you were visiting with Alan, I think it was, about some FKTs that you've done, but your most recent one. Would you
Yeah,
mind telling us about that? And for our
sure.
viewers who don't know, tell us a little bit about what FKT means.
Yeah. So FKTs in the ultra world, I guess, or not even ultra world, in the running world, it stands for fastest known time. And so like all over the world, really, there are routes that people do and submit a time, and you can, try to better a time that someone else has done. And so years ago, I did one in Arkansas. It was like my first one on this trail out there, and it kind of hooked me a little bit on this kind of idea of you're racing. It's kind of like you're racing yourself and I guess the ghost of a former time of somebody else out there. So there's not a head-to-head competition. You set your start date, you choose when you want to do it. You can pick the season. The challenge if you choose an FKT where you don't live is you might think you're choosing a really good weather window, and then you make a plane ticket, and then you kind of live with what choice you made. And so the most recent one I did is called the Centennial Trail, and it's this trail in South Dakota in the Black Hills, and it goes from Wind Cave National Park and ends at Bear Butte outside of Sturgis. And it's 126, 127 miles. I've done the Black Hills 50, which covers almost 50 miles of the trail. There's a little bit of the 50 miler. The 50 miler is long, and there's a little bit of it that's off the Centennial Trail. But I'd been on that, and then every year our family road trips to Minnesota. So I live in Oregon, and we drive across the country to Minnesota. So we've made the Black Hills one of our stop offs after discovering it one year. Because sometimes we'll drive through North Dakota, but we really fell in love with the Black Hills. And so we'll camp there. And I've done, sections of the trail just as a stopover, and kind of started to love that trail quite a bit, and had been toying with the idea of maybe trying to do it all at once at some point. But my big goal that I hope to do one day is a Superior Trail in northern Minnesota, so up on the North Shore of Minnesota, and that one is 310 miles. And so this summer when I was training, I kind of had the Superior Trail in mind, which this is the same. I've done this before. Like, I've had the Superior Trail in mind, and then I pick a different trail that's a little shorter to kind of like gain confidence. And for me to go to Minnesota and do 310 miles, like, that's a big commitment, just time, the gear you need, like hitting that weather window, like just so many factors. So I've done an unsupported trail attempt before out in Arkansas, and I've experienced some things that I realize are some challenges I'm going to encounter. So last minute pivot, maybe a month before I went out and did the Centennial Trail, I kind of pivoted and decided I would try the Centennial Trail and do that one all on my own and work through some of the issues I've encountered before, and kind of make sure I really feel good about being alone on the trail at night, and, doing something where I have no support along the way. And so I booked a ticket, and then my dad found out I was doing it, and he decided last minute that he would come, but I'm doing it unsupported. So what we did is we camped together at the start, and then he went and explored the Black Hills on his own, and I did the trail, and then he met me at the finish. And so the cool thing about the Centennial Trail is you get such a diversity. So you start in the Eight Wing Cave National Park, which is kind of like grasslands. They have buffalo. It's gorgeous. And then you get into like the Black Elk Wilderness, and it looks a lot like what you maybe think of Colorado or Utah. Like, you have the aspen trees, you have really rugged like rock, you have lakes. It's gorgeous. And then Sturgis is grassland, very open. Like, you don't want to be in that section in a lightning storm. And then Bear Butte at the end, I'd never been up it before doing this attempt, and so I didn't know until I was on it. To climb Bear Butte, it's about a little over a mile and a half, and it's just this switchback, rocky trail. Like, again, wouldn't want to have to do that one in a lightning storm. And so that is always a worry, like out there, because they do get those thunder and lightning storms certain times a year. But I chose early October, thinking cool temperatures. I'll get like the really pretty leaf cover, ideally less muddy than kind of the summer. And I just happened to hit like this weekend of like crazy heat. And so it was mid 80s for me on day one, and it was in the 90s for me on day two in October. And I had been more concerned that I might encounter like snow or something. Right. And so, and the problem in the fall too is a lot of the water sources are dried up. And so, I knew about how much water would be out there. I did my thing self-supported, which means nobody can help you along the way, but you can go and you can stash supplies for yourself. And so the day before, there's one section of trail that is about 26 miles between water sources. And so I went out and put a gallon of water out there. And then I did like two or three other little mini stashes for myself of like a thing of Coke and, a little bit of food. I didn't want to bank too much on them because I had this fear I would get there and that would be what I'd be expecting and it would be gone. Like someone would take it or something. And so I still had my pack kind of carrying what I would carry. And so these were sort of bonus, stashes along the way, which ended up, they weren't even all that helpful because my stomach turned so bad with the heat that the stashes in the later miles were not anything that I wanted to even look at. But, I put one at maybe like mile 20, and then I think I had one at mile 40, and then I forgot to put one out there at a different section. So I didn't actually have one again until almost mile 100. So I think, just the day before I had flown in, I had to do all this in a very short period of time and got a little like just mixed up. And so I was also missing a stash out there. And so yeah, so my dad dropped me off at the start at like 5 or 6 a.m., like right as it was getting, I guess probably 6 a.m. And yeah, within a mile, I see this huge elk that was just awesome, like giant. You could still see all the moisture from, the dew on its back. And then I had, within another little bit, there's a buffalo. I did have one section of trail where there was a buffalo like right on my trail, and it wasn't like a good place where I could just go around. Like it's like buffalo cliff, like cliff. And so I had to down climb on this cliff to get around the buffalo because I'm terrified. Like I don't, obviously you don't want to mess with the buffalo and get too close to him. And so, yeah, it was an adventure. I loved it for 40 miles and I suffered greatly for 85 miles because somewhere between mile 40 and 47, I ran out of water. And when I got to like that next section, where I could get some water and I chugged it, and then all of a sudden my stomach just turned and I couldn't really get it back. And I think part of that is just you're at the mercy of whatever food and nutrition that you brought along with you. The stuff that I had was not working for the needs that now I was having. And so for the last 85 miles, I really couldn't eat. And if I did, it didn't stay down. And so there was about a 24-hour section of just not eating at all or not having calories. And so it just meant slowing down. And I'm at a point in my life right now, which is different than when I was in my 20s, where I'm not a finish at all cost person, but I do kind of know myself at this point where it's not like it's awesome to be doing this and not eating and like puking, but I also like, I know I'm okay. Like I'm not doing this where I'm just going to like kill myself out here to get this FKT.
Right.
So it just meant going a little bit slower. I was fine. It just wasn't as much fun as I was hoping for. But really the coolest thing, so my dad had climbed, so it ends at the top of Bear Butte. So once you hit the top, your time stops, you're good, you can see someone. So my dad waited for me on the top of Bear Butte, and I had like a Garmin InReach messenger, like I was able to communicate like with him. He knew I was fine, moving. And so he waited up there and I finished in the dark. And so I think he was a little ambitious in what time he thought I would finish because he was up there for a few hours waiting for me. And then, I get up there in the dark at the top of this like gnarly view and had my dad up there. And I had messaged him saying, I can't eat anything, but like, I love chocolate milk after. And so the whole time I'm climbing up Bear Butte, I'm picturing that my dad has hiked the chocolate milk up to the top. And I get up there and no, the chocolate milk is down in the car waiting for me for there. But I've got to now like climb off this butte at the end. And I would like climb and have to kind of sit down because I haven't eaten forever. And it's a gnarly like trail down. But yeah, I'm really intrigued by kind of exploring a little bit more of these longer trails. And, I know they have 200-mile races out there and that sounds really appealing, but there's something kind of more appealing to me about doing it on my own. I'm also like you can do them supported. So I could have changed, direction and had my dad support me. And maybe with these conditions, that would have been the smarter choice. And he could have brought more water and like food out there. But I had really wanted to try kind of not that this trail is short, but shorter than, the Superior Trail. And I wanted to work through like my fear of going through the night and like having to adapt on my own to whatever gear and stuff that I brought with me. And so, I had a pretty heavy pack because, even though it was hot, you're still going to bring your emergency gear. Like I'm trying to approach these from a smart, being responsible adventure kind of thing, because the trail that I keep referring back to, the Ozark Highlands Trail, I've done it supported and that one went well and was successful. So I wanted to also attempt it unsupported, and I hit another bad weather thing where it actually ended up like raining and snowing on me. And then I got sleep deprivation and this whole sort of like cascade of things happened. So it made me nervous about trying one again and going through the night and like having bad conditions. And this one was bad conditions in the other way, but honestly, I'll take heat over the like really cold temperatures when you're alone out there on the trails.
For
But
sure.
yeah, I think it's that's kind of what's motivating me now, and maybe it's just having done this sport for 23 years and like done so many different races, and I like to race still, but I'm more almost motivated by new this kind of challenge and trying some of these trails. And honestly, like when else do you, I got to see the entire Centennial Trail. Like I have kids, I work, I don't have 2 weeks to go hike the trail. And I know sometimes people get criticized for FKTs because you're moving, quickly and they feel like you don't maybe appreciate the trail. But I've seen that trail in sections. I've spent time hiking it. I've run it, but also like you get to see it all at one time and you're awake through the whole night. So you're seeing, it in the evening, you're seeing like it with all different conditions. And I kind of find that to be very cool. And I'm not moving crazy fast. So I mean, I'm still appreciating all, I wanted to go in the fall so I could see the fall colors. And so, yeah, for me to be able to tackle some of these trails with where I am in life with kids and work and stuff, like I kind of have to do it that way. And, the Superior Trail, I've done the Superior 100 out there. So I've gotten to see that section and I've run most of it in sections or hiked it. So I've seen it again, like I've appreciated it at a different rate, but I would love to connect that whole one at one time too. So to be determined, maybe you'll be hearing about me trying that
Ah,
one.
yes. Yeah, I have a few guests that I've promised, or made them promise to come back when they either complete a race that they have maybe DNF'd and they're just really wanting to get back and do. And so you have an open spot
All
when
right.
you complete the Superior Trail. I'd love to
Perfect.
hear about it. And
Yeah, that'll be some motivation.
I definitely agree with you about the adventure side of it because you can go do Cocodona or Monster 300 or one of these, and that's it is super cool, right? Don't get me wrong, like all the multi-day people out there, don't come at me in the comments. Like I think it's amazing. I've done Cocodona. I think it's amazing. I love it. But there's an adventure. The FKT has always really kind of been in the back of my mind, and just for that exact same reason, because it's an adventure. You're doing it all by yourself. Maybe you have some support depending on how you
Yeah,
do it, but
yeah,
what an adventure. One of my guests, he does FKTs up in Canada, and just the story is just amazing, because
yeah,
it's not like well, I just made it to the next aid station. It's like, no, you had to find a water source and you had to,
yeah,
yeah, just some really cool stuff. So very impressive. Um, uh, Ashley, I really look up to you for that because that is a huge adventure. A lot of people
yeah,
would just shy away from even going for a hike in the evening because it would get dark. Let alone,
yeah.
oh, I'm going to go
No.
live out there for a couple days.
Well, and I feel really grateful that I'm at a comfort level to be able to do this. And I've even thought about it, when we do road trip out and the first time I was out on the Centennial Trail, like there's no cell coverage out there for very much. And, my husband would drop me off at a trailhead and pick me up at a different trailhead. And I would just go for the first time and like see a section of trail. And I know we all have different kind of maybe comfort levels of what we feel comfortable and confident doing on our own. And I definitely, it bothers me so much when I kind of hear criticism of something happens to someone out in the trails and it's immediately like, well, they were by themselves, like that's on them kind of. And I think we all kind of learn what we're comfortable doing. And when I first got into ultras, like there was no way I would be comfortable just jumping into 120 some miles, like alone in the dark in South Dakota. I don't know South Dakota. I don't live here. Like I don't
Yeah.
really know what animals I'm going to, deal with over time, and kind of doing longer and longer sort of solo training runs has kind of helped increase my ceiling of where I feel comfortable. And to be honest, like I live out in a town of 3,000 people. Like I run out in the woods. Like I'm way more comfortable doing that than if I were to go visit a city and go for a run. Like that for me is out of my wheelhouse. Like someone who lives in a city, feels comfortable. And so I think you kind of learn to find what your comfort level is. And I don't do these big crazy trails to like scare myself or to see even like see what I'm made of or any of that. Like when I go into it, I am at I'm 80% comfortable with what I'm going to do. There's going to be some point out there that I might be a little bit nervous, but the thing about the Centennial Trail in the end that really like stoked me was just throughout the whole night, I never got scared. And what happens
Mm.
is you're dealing with so many other things. Like for me, it was my stomach and trying to stay awake because I couldn't eat. And I'm like literally laying down in a porta pot with bugs and not even carried. Like your care level goes out the door. And so
Yeah.
you no longer really care about everything else that you were worried about because all you're trying to do is not puke, stay
Yeah.
awake, navigate. The one that I did in Arkansas where things went really south, like my mind was so figuring out how to navigate because now I've got snow on top of the leaves, on top of like my phone dying. That was like my navigational tool. Like I'm not thinking about the things that I thought I would be worried about. And so
Yeah.
I was worried when I did the Centennial Trail that I might, it hit night and I would maybe kind of panic back to some of those things that happened in Arkansas. And it didn't. And I had to go through this. There's an ATV section of trail, and I was kind of worried about that one being at night because I thought, well, if someone's out there, it's going to be where they can drive in. But actually doing it at night was great because nobody's out there. I make it through the section that can get busy traffic. And yeah, I felt really, really comfortable. I think I was just spending that whole time trying to problem solve, the stomach and just like you're clicking off the miles and you see Bear Butte when you have like 40 miles to go and it's like out there, like kind of taunting you a little bit. And so it really just came down to all the problem solving. And I don't know if you've ever had like in a race, like I get to a point sometime where in a race where I'm like, I wouldn't mind if I fell down this and like broke my ankle because then it would be a totally valid reason to stop. Like you kind of reach a level of that where you just aren't worrying about the things that you thought you'd be worrying about a little bit.
No, 100% agree. And you talked about people kind of saying, detractors kind of saying, like, oh, they shouldn't have been out there by themselves, things like that. We hear that a lot in Arizona as Arizona trail runners in the summer.
Yeah,
Um, I'm not admitting to running on closed trails and going around the fence. I'm not saying I've ever done that. But
totally. Right.
the comfort level, I see the comments like some out of towner will get stranded, and it's sad. I'm not making light of that situation, but the comments are like, people deserve it to die if they're out there. And it's like, whoa, everybody slow down.
Yeah.
you know, you your body gets used to whatever you're conditioned with, and yeah, if you're comfortable being out in the woods, and someone says they shouldn't have been alone, you're like, just because you're not comfortable or you don't think that somebody could do that doesn't mean it's not possible, and they're not smart about it. That's what I always get to. Is
Yeah. Yeah.
just because someone's out in the summer in Phoenix running, again, I'm not saying you should do that or you shouldn't. I'm just saying the people that are, it's not their first rodeo. Just like if you see somebody doing an FKT and it's going through the night, that's not their first rodeo. That they didn't just wake up that day and be like, I'm gonna go do 150 miles in South Dakota in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
So I always like to try and put that in perspective when you hear those detractors. It's like, come on,
Yeah. No, for
kind of
sure. And I
like
jokingly
stay in your
say,
own lane, kind of thing. Like,
yeah,
stay in your own lane, man. It's good. We're good.
right. Yeah. No, I always say I'm going to carry everything so that if I had to get rescued, no one is saying she wasn't prepared. Like I will
Yes.
carry a coat no matter what. I have a tracker. Like I'll have it all. So at least they'll say she was prepared, and then this happened. But yeah, I mean, I do think there is we've got to be responsible. We don't want people out having to use resources because we
Of
were
course.
not coming prepared. So definitely like that's I feel like you've got to research and know what you're in for and have the right resources.
Yeah.
And for me, it was kind of a relief when my dad decided he wanted to come out because I didn't really know. I had no idea how long this trail was going to take, and I don't have a ton of connections in South Dakota. And so, had I needed a rescue, I did have a shuttle driver, lined up, and I I had a plan, but it was nice to know that I don't have to rely on someone having to come out. Like my dad, for him, it would be, can he figure out where I am and like navigate to
Right.
finding me? But at least I knew he was out there. The one stipulation was that he was going to camp somewhere with cell coverage so that he could see my tracker and I could reach him if I needed. And, but yeah,
Awesome.
it was all good.
Well, I'm just this is so awesome that your story and the FKT and obviously all the races you've done. But one thing I did that kind of perked me up, my ears up a little bit when you were talking about you were mentioning you're like, I'm a mom, I'm working. How do you balance it all? Because it's not like you're, and I'm not knocking marathoners or road. It's not like you're training for a half marathon or 26 miles. You're doing a lot of efforts to
Yeah.
train for these bigger events. How do you fit it all in?
Yeah, no, it's a very valid question, and it's changed a lot over the years. Like when I first got into them, I was 20 years old in grad school and had me to worry about. And then I had kids, so I have two girls, and it looked a lot. It changed a lot. Like how I trained pre-kids was doing whatever I wanted, going having 8-hour adventures, and then taking a nap when I got home, and then I had the era of a young kid era, and it was a lot of running with a stroller, trailhead swaps with my husband. So we had this whole system worked out where one of us would maybe like run to a location and the other would bring the kids. And especially like when mine were young and like I nursed my kids, like I had to kind of factor that in too. So sometimes he would meet me with, one of them if needed. But then we'd all kind of do something, maybe at this area as a family, and then maybe he would bike back home so he could get his workout into, or he would run. And so it kind of, because I was running maybe point to point and not having to drive back on my own, it limited some of the time. So it took some of that guilt off. He got his workout in. So we did a lot of that when they were little. And then it was a lot more, I would say, quality over quantity for a spell, especially when they were young. Um, Now I thought it was going to I thought as they got older, it would totally get easier. And I was having this conversation on a different podcast, and I was like, I was wrong, because what happens is now they're older and they're in sports and they have opinions and they no longer
Yeah.
want to do trailhead swap. And we live in a small town where we drive 1 to 3 hours to go to where their sports are. And I work remote from home now. So I used to be a teacher. I taught elementary, and then I taught preschool when my girls were born. And then after COVID, I coach online, and then I work for a company called Defunkify out of Eugene. I run their help desk and help with like content and stuff like that. And so because I work remote, I do have this flexibility in that I can, try to sneak part of my run in while they're at school. And then I can make up some of those hours. Like I brought a computer to a sporting event, and like waiting in my car for the game to start, I'm on the computer. When I was a teacher, it was nice because I had summers off, and now it looks different. But when we, road trip to Minnesota, I put a hotspot on my phone and I work from the car as we drive. And so it's just getting really creative, it being intentional with the time, and also deciding like what your priorities are, because it would be easy for me to say I don't have the time to train, but I do. I just sometimes I run with a friend at 5:30 in the morning. Sometimes my runs are 3 runs in the day. One of them when they're asleep, one of them when they're at school, and one of them during basketball practice, right? Or, I'll do track workouts with some guys in town, and I do them at night under the lights of the track and when everyone's back home and settled. And so if it's a priority and it matters to you, I think you can find the time. And for me, like just the running, I don't even care what, if you, we don't even call it training, just the running is like, that is something that's really like, that's important to me. It's like kind of what helps me survive the other things. You know, the, I don't race as much as I used to, just because my kids don't like it when I go off to races. Like they kind of, when they were little, they came to everything. Like I ran Leadville with my husband and I camped for 3 weeks with my 15-month-old daughter, and she was fine. She loved it, like didn't know better. So we could camp for 3 weeks. I could run Leadville, and it was easy. I mean, I thought it was hard at the time, but actually, like, it was easy because she couldn't voice her opinion. There's no way now that my girls would camp for 3 weeks, to get ready for a race with the summer storms of Leadville. So I'm just more intentional with the races I pick. I'm like now notorious for signing up for something like in a couple days out, like, because I'm like, all right, no one has a game this weekend. Like the weather's okay over the pass. Like I'll just sort of sign up last minute, which is maybe why I like some of the old school races because they don't always fill up and I can jump into something. And so I always tell people that I am training to be ready to say yes to anything at any time. And so I don't have a single like race yet on my calendar for this year, but I guarantee I'll do some. I just don't know. I might decide to do one in a week or, and just
Right.
that's sort of the way I roll now. And I just have to be, my training looks different at certain times of the year based on kind of like kid activities and my husband's schedule and my work schedule. And so I kind of have to be a little bit more flexible than the old me was okay with being. And so, I have friends that I would love to run with more, but it doesn't always work. Like sometimes I just have to like do a lot of it solo because I have to fit it in when I can. And then when I get to run with friends, that's the best. Like it's awesome. It's like great time. I run with two moms, one day a week. We call it early girls because we're out early. And what's more, yeah, we get to run together, but it's honestly like we've been doing it since our kids were little. And the mom, like the talking about all the mom stuff while we're running is like that more important than the run itself. Like we
Mm.
always are like, whatever we say out here stays out here and we can lament over everything. And there's like nothing off, the table. Like we just talk through all the mom stuff. And, so that's, I would encourage like, especially new moms to find some few other runners. And it doesn't matter if they're your pace, like, we run the pace that works for the moms that are there, and it means we take some walk breaks or we do whatever, and it doesn't matter one bit to me because that time being with these moms matters more than what that like run training looks like. And I had friends when my girls were little whose kids were a little bit older, and I would meet them with the stroller and they would push that stroller for me because they had been there. They knew how hard it was. And that one run, I had a different mom like pushing the stroller. And so it's just really like finding your community. And if you can find some mom runner friends, or I mean, they don't have any runners, just walking friends, something to like get out and have that camaraderie. I tell anyone that I coach who is like a mom, I'm like, it doesn't matter what is on your plan. If someone asks you to go for a run and you want to, like, we will change your plan because having another person to be able to talk to, an adult to talk to, like, when you're in the midst of like young kids. And then I was teaching preschool while I had young kids, like
Oh
I had
my God.
5 and below was like the age group I talked to all day long. And so it was just so valuable to have some grown up friends to be able to commiserate with. And yeah, so it's a juggling act, and balance is like a great word that we might all strive for, but right before, say I have 100 miler, like there's going to be a week or two where we're not balanced. Like I'm probably training more than we have time for. My house, I would hope no one would come look and see what it looks like. I feel like, you can tell where I am in my training by how the laundry load, because I'm also trying to get all that done during the day too. And there's balls will drop. And I think if we are trying to have it look perfect, it's going to only cause us to like something won't work in the way you want. And so being a little bit flexible, but finding your community is just so helpful. And I just look up to when if you talk about like the runners that I admire, it's great if you're a professional runner and that has become what you've been able to do. That's awesome. Like I think that's so cool. And back in my 20s or 30s, like it would have been awesome, but I really look up to the mom or like just people who who are juggling like a full-time, job in like the medical field, or they have young kids and like they're figuring out ways to make it happen. Like there's a lot of moms who are still doing like really great things out there. And I know ultra running is getting more and more professionalized. Like, when I back in the day, like there wasn't really such thing as being like a pro runner in that was like your whole thing. Like there was maybe a couple at the top, but now there is definitely more of a professionalism to it. But I just really admire the ones who are out there, like, you saw at Spike Camp, did you see the mom carrying her baby up the hill? Like every
Yep.
time I passed them, it was just like, you guys are awesome. Like that's something I would have totally, done back in the day with ours. And then I'll also say, if you're a new mom, you might picture it looking one way. Like I visualized me on a treadmill and my little kids sitting in a pack and play, nicely playing, and I could just get the runs in. My kids would not sit in a pack and play. They were the ones that as soon as I got furthest away from my house in the stroller started like screaming. I had to carry a pack with me so that if one started screaming, I could put her in the pack because I'd be stressed about the neighbors thinking I was abusing my kids out there in the stroller. But it never looked how I visualized. And I couldn't run through my whole pregnancy like I thought I would be able to. Like nothing really looked like that package that I thought it was going to look like. And so, a side note, just new moms, like give yourself a little grace. It might not look the way that, I love when moms are like real on social media and like talk about
Yes.
all the messy stuff, because there's a lot of accounts out there and it looks really cute and sweet. And those kids sleep through the night, but mine did not.
You know what? There's so much curated, edited, written content out there. And, I have all daughters, and I really fear because they'll show me things and I'm like, you guys realize that's not real. Like
Yeah.
that's not real life.
Yeah.
So I love what you said, and you spoke on this idea that it's not what, it's okay if it's not what you thought it would be. I mean, it even goes to training. I know when I first started in endurance sports, my kids were so young, and they would get in the car and go wherever my wife would take them to
Yeah.
meet me at a race or wherever. Now they're 17, 16, the older two. It's like, no, that's not.
Nope.
And they stay up late. I'm not getting to bed at a reasonable hour anymore. It's like, wait, what's going on? So it like, I've always thought about like enjoy. It's a part of enjoying the moment. Like it changes, and I've had to learn to be okay with like, oh, I'm not up with all the guys that I used to run with, because my daughter has cheer practice, and I was taking her to cheer practice, and because I didn't want to get up at 3:30 to be out of the, whatever. But
Totally.
things just change, and I think that's great what you said about it. Just like be okay with it. That you just have to, if it's your priority, you still have to fit it in. But it's okay if it looks different than it did 6 months ago, 2 years ago. It's okay if it's not how you envisioned it being.
Yeah.
But I really
Yeah.
appreciate you speaking on that, because I am not a mom, but I do know mom guilt is very real. So I
It's
appreciate you
very
sharing
real.
that, because you know these moms need a break.
Yeah.
Moms need a break, and not to be talked to all day. And I like what you said about enjoying conversations with other ladies that were in the same station you're in, and you can have some adult conversations. So I really like how you put that. And that I'm kind of soaking in all your whole story, and you've touched on, like, if you look her up on Ultra Sign Up, you realize she touched on like such a small section of all the different things she's done, and the FKTs as well. Like this would have to be like a 5 hour like multi-series to just go through really each one of the races. So I'm just soaking in what you're saying, and it's so amazing to me. You starting out as someone who didn't like running, and
Right.
and now, we're not going to ask who dad's favorite is. Was it the one sister who was fast, or the sister now who's doing the ultras? But it's just so awesome, and it's such a motivating thing. This for me is almost selfish, because I get to talk to all these amazing people and just get so motivated by their stories and everything that they've done and that they are going to do. But Ashley, as we're kind of wrapping this up, I always like to give my guests the last word. But at least that's what I call it. But it's usually more than one word. The last, thing, if something you thought you wanted to say, or maybe a mantra you live by, or just whatever it is, a shout out to somebody. But I'll turn the last bit over to you and let you kind of share that with us, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, no, I mean, no, just I'll end on a ironic story. It was funny. It was just like maybe a 15K race out in my hometown, and working one of the aid stations was my daughter's running coach growing up. And he sees me out there, all these years later, and he's like, "Man, you wouldn't even like come and do these races back in the day." And he knows like what I do now, and it was just kind of this funny, like he is still coaching, cross country for Philomath, and he was her coach when she was, I don't know, 10, 11, 12 years old. And so he kind of gave me a hard time that like here the resistant runner is like choosing to go run the trails that like back when I was a kid were like, so hard for me to do. And I, probably complained and needed to be bribed to get out and do them. But, I would say too, my oldest daughter did cross country this year for the first time. She's a freshman in high school. And, she's still figuring out, how to be uncomfortable. Right. So, I think she thinks because we're runners that she will just show up and be a runner. But it takes moving through, like you have to kind of learn how to break through that like bit of discomfort. And, it's been so long since I was a new runner, but I do remember after having my girls and having to kind of start over saying like, wow, I don't know, like I can see why people hate running or give up on it, because until you can run 3, 4, 5 miles comfortably, running kind of does suck a little bit. Like it's hard. And, she was still in that stage, and it was hard, but it's been fun because now she will ask me to go for a run with her. And at the beginning of the cross country season, there was a lot of tears and the runs were not much fun. There was a lot of complaining and other things. And now we've reached a point where we'll go run a few miles and we can kind of chat. And, it's not something that I would ever push her into. Like she's kind of a late bloomer, like she's discovering sports at a later time, but she has, she was playing softball and has decided this year she's going to not play softball and she's going to do track. So,
Nice. There you
and,
go.
everyone says like, oh, you must be so happy she's like following your footsteps, but really like, it's not that at all. Like if she did softball and loves softball, that's great. Like for me, it's wanting my kids to find something that one is active, like that they're out of, they get out of school where they've been sitting on Chromebooks all day and they're doing something and they're getting from sports like what I got as a kid, because like that was my whole thing growing up, like the teams and the friendships. And I think when you're, my daughter's like shy and a little like it's hard to navigate the world now, even more so than it was when we were kids. And so the being on a team for her is so valuable and so awesome. Like I don't, if she figures it out or doesn't figure out how to push herself to get to these next levels, that doesn't really matter. I just hope she keeps loving it. Cause I think, I've been having these conversations with people where sports are just different now. It's so much more intensity. You have to kind of do it year round, and everyone's pushing their kids to do more and more competitive teams and stuff. And so I'm just happy that now she has found like this like joy in running that I did not find at her age. And I did not like to work at her age. And I definitely did not like to be uncomfortable at her age. So I feel it. But there was a day when she had a couple swim practices in a row within like 24 hours. And she told me, she's like, Mom, you do not know what it feels like to be tired. And I did almost have to like say something to that. But for the most part, like they're navigating a lot, and she was tired, but we're still learning how to, be uncomfortable. But I think that is an important thing to learn, like to get out of your comfort zone a little bit and to realize like you can be a little uncomfortable and you will be okay. You'll
Yeah,
survive.
I love it. That's, the kids. I feel the same way about sports with my kids, my girls. If you wanted to do softball, if you wanted to do Spartan racing, if you whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
let's. I think it's so important to have that thing you're dedicated to and you're trying to perfect and get better at. I think there's so much life lessons to be learned
Totally.
in
Yeah.
any sport to if you really are serious about it. So, Ashley, I can't thank you enough. This has been so much fun.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you sharing all your insights and also your story. I think it's going to resonate with a lot of people. I think you're a great example of just adventure. You're just always looking
I
for
like it. Yeah.
adventure. Yeah, it's so cool. I really like it, and I look up to you for that because that's a special thing. You might be one of those people when they're like, "Do you want to get on this boat and sail to a new land?" And you're like, "Yes, I'll go. I want an adventure."
Well, that's
So,
why Taylor, Taylor Spike, he's one of my good buddies. And the reason I think is Taylor is like a yes person. Like I'll ask if he wants to do something, he'll say yes, and then he'll get the details later. And I've said yes
yeah.
to his, and then I'm like, wait, so what are we doing? So we all need a good adventure, like yes friend who doesn't need all
Yeah.
the details before agreeing to whatever craziness you know it's going to be.
I love it. So true. Well, Ashley, again, thank you so much. And this has just been so much fun.
Thank you.
So thank you again and have a great night.
Yeah, you as well.
Take care.
Bye.